You think about how many growers there are in Michigan. Let's say there's 10,000, even though we know there's way more than that. We'll say there's 10,000, growers in Michigan. Today I would beg to differ that 80 to 90% of those are using salts in one form or another, whether it's a liquid, like yep, or a majority of those are probably water soluble. And why? Cost of production, right? I mean, we're not in a market right now where I grew with Nectar for the Gods for years. Like, I love Nectar for the Gods, but I don't think I can afford to use Nectar for the Gods right now, and so the market demands right now, we're trying to keep cost to produce low, and along with salts comes, again, it's an unfamiliar territory. I mean, salts have been huge in big ag for years. Jax, J.R. Peters is then industry leading in big ag. And when I mean big ag, I mean outside of cannabis, right? And now cannabis is, we really had a crazy boom over the last half a decade. And along with that, a lot of the agricultural stuff that's been huge for years is now coming over, right, into cannabis. And water soluble powders or salts, bag salts are one of them. And I just, Athena, an example real quick, Athena just came out with a product called Fade, and I'll just quickly touch on this because I was a big part of pushing for that product.
When is that coming out?
What's that?
When is that coming out?
It should have started, you guys got some being shipped here yet, Craig? Yeah, I think December 1st they start shipping. So, yeah.
So I tried ordering it, from Hawthorne, but it didn't want us.
Yeah,
January.
For Fade?
Yeah.
January?
Really?
Yeah.
January?
Yeah, okay. Well, that product is a result of dealing with a whole lot of this with salts.
Yeah.
Not a whole lot, but identifying what growers are doing, right? We have a lot of us, even me still, it took me years to not flush. Flushing was just part of what I did. When I was growing in 20-gallon pots with organics, there's some of that needs to be done. When you're growing in a 1-gallon pot in irrigation in a inert media like cocoa or rockwool, I don't think we knew. And how do we know? How do we start to see what's the problem? What's going on here? When I start flushing for weeks with just water, right, in a small pot in an inert media that has no life in it and no food. When you start flushing for long periods with water, not every time, but a lot of the time, you're going to start seeing a lot more bud rot towards the end of flower. And the reason is that it's the biggest factor is going to be the lack of calcium, right? And you got to have calcium as the mortar inside that plant. And the second you take that away, that plant is very, very susceptible. Just like, somebody with a weak immune system, they're super susceptible to disease, right? And so the MO for most salt companies, because I've ran and still trial everything. Yeah, every bag powder, if something's new, trust me, I'm running it in a room. And every single company that I ran, including Athena, over the last couple of years, if you went to a traditional flush, right, this bud rot was through the roof. And so there is a lot of science behind that as well. So then we start tapering down, right? But you really need to pull nitrogen as well the last couple of weeks of flower. And if you guys take a gander later through here and look at all these nutrient companies, most all of them run, something to the end of flower. They tell you to flush the last week. That's just kind of been the typical thing that all companies have done. The week 8 on a feed schedule, week 9 will just say flush. Which if it depends on how you're growing, that still may work fine. If you're in bigger pots, especially if you're in soil, and I still grow in soil, I do flush because it's necessary. That media is charged, right? There's food in there. But when you're in an inert media, you don't really need to do that. You need to taper down certain minerals to the end of flower, but nitrogen's not one you want. Chlorophyll in the flower is going to lead to a harsher smoke, blacker ash. It's going to be very harsh on your throat. Your testing wise, your numbers, THC, are always going to be a little bit lower. So Fade was a result of this and trying to get a perfect flower, in the bag, right? So, but yeah, bud rot is obviously, it can also be a result of bad environmental controls. Huge, and humidity being number one, and also temperature. A lot of people don't think about your VPD or your KPA, your kilopascals at the end of flower. You want your KPA typically 1.3 or above. And if you get a VPD chart, you can figure that out.
Okay.
Take your temperature, take your humidity, and you can find it on a chart, right? And you want to be 1.3 or above. If I'm running, 70 degrees at the end of flower night and day, I want to be 40 to 45%, RH consistently, to be safe. That's going to keep me in that 1.3 to or above range. And so a lot of people can't get this. They can't get this low. The lower you drop your temperature, what happens? Less moisture you can pull out of the air, right? Your Dehus, the Quest, the Andons, all of them. FYI, don't buy Andon, they suck. But anyways,
How do we feel about reheat?
what's that?
How do we feel about reheat?
Reheat is, dude, listen, reheat's something I know what reheat is. I've almost, in a couple spots have done it, but I start looking at like electricity usage, and from talking with some of my friends that are utilizing it in legal facilities, they still have to have supplemental dehumidification, right?
Yeah.
And also for me personally, in smaller environments, smaller rooms, I can't justify running a 90 amp heat strip to produce heat, right? My places aren't on natural gas, and I've been told that really it has to be electric heat strip inserted to produce the heat. And essentially, what you're doing is you're running your AC and your heat at the same time, so it's blowing in 70-degree air, and it just constantly runs and pulls moisture out of your room. And I get it up. I think a 5-ton. Somebody can correct me if they know. I think a 5-ton will pull I think it's like 1,000 pints. It'll pull a lot of pints. But I think for me, it comes down to an electrical thing for me. Like, am I really saving at the end of the day?
That's what I don't know.
And a lot of the build outs I see, it's like so much ducting inside the rooms to get everything even.
Yeah.
Dehus are, and Craig knows, I just spent another 10 grand here buying more Dehus for rooms that won't go low enough for me, Because when you start going down 70 degrees and below, I mean, I'll add a 225 into a room, and if I'm at 48%, it'll go down to like 45. It's like 2 to 3% when you're going down in those. Now, if you're at 80 degrees, they pull awesome.
Yeah, because that's exactly what I mean.
Exactly, they pull awesome.
Yeah.
So bulking up on humidifiers the last 2 weeks of flower is huge. Trying to mitigate the spikes at lights off is huge. If you guys have the ability to really control. I'm not familiar with every control system out there. I use Troll Master or Agrotech in most of my spots, and Troll Master Pro. I'm able to set, when my humidifiers come on. Same thing with Agrotech. I'm able to not just go lights on, lights off. So an hour before, 30 to 60 minutes before lights off, I'm taking my temps and my humidities down where they need to go. That way, when the lights kick off, I'm not having some huge spike. I'll take that down over that last 30 minutes.
You can cut CO2 at that same time.
Yeah, so my CO2 is always cut an hour before lights off. Start depleting that. You don't need to run it up to let that start getting taken off. So when the lights come off, you're not seeing these big spikes. Does anybody here see really big CO2 spikes at night? Yeah.
I started doing the hour. I started shutting it off an hour before lights because of that.
Yep. How high do you guys see?
So I'm getting way high up, like 35 to 4,000 with lights off, and I'm wondering if that stagnant CO2 in the room is helping my plants to finish a lot longer. I'm seeing my plants go 70, 75 days, and I'm not sure if it's because of the residual CO2 in the room.
How long are you running CO2? Like, how long are you running CO2, supplemental CO2 in flower?
Up till week 8.
Week 8.
Week 7.
Yep.
And then I start cutting it to 800, but I'm like seeing these plants going 73 days, and I ran them 4 times, and they always finished at 63. So why are they going an extra 10, 15 days?
CO2, are you running burners or
Burners,
tanks?
of course, yeah.
Burners are.
They're the worst.
I had a terrible experience.
I
So
hate 'em.
this is a funny story. I've never used burners in my life until recently. I always use gas, and I acquired a spot, and they had burners in there, and I did a little due diligence. I'm
Don't
like,
daisy
okay.
chain them.
Well, this place was completely sealed, and it was a new build out and so they never really ran there. I think they did a run or two, and they didn't have much luck. And anyways, I got in there, and we went through about 900 clones, bring them into these rooms. I couldn't figure out why at day 10 they would all go to shit. I thought it was the pH in my root zone. It was the bad cocoa. I started blaming Dutch planting and going back to blaming everything else, because that's what we do, right? Oh, my run's fucked up. Fucking Dina, it ruined my crops. Typically, it's not that. So anyways, after the last round we brought in, and I brought into the room next door, and I'm like, all right, it's got these burners, something's going on. So I consulted with some greenhouse guys, because burners are huge in the greenhouse industry. Well, burners put off ethylene, especially if they're ran on propane, which mine were.
Yep.
They have, your room should be exhausted all night, right? And if they're not, ethylene toxicity.
Yes,
So
sir.
I got to learn the hard way about ethylene, so my plants were just choking out at night. There's just, ethylene gas was just choking my plants out, and as soon as I cut before we brought gas in, I just cut the burners off and ran no CO2. Within 2 days, they were
all back.
they were
Same
back to
thing.
normal. So we ripped out the burners and I'll never use one again. So if you're using burners, exhausting is huge. And it may be a simple thing for, a lot of guys that had ran burners. I talked to like, oh yeah, that's common sense. I'm like, well, I never ran one. It wasn't common sense to me.
Right.
Propane
What's that?
or also with the natural gas?
I think it's both, but I think it's more. I think it's an off gas that happens with both. Don't quote me on that, but I know that with propane, the guys I talk to, most big farms and
Got exhaust.
ag greenhouses are ran on propane as well.
It is both.
What's that?
It is both.
Both. Yeah, I think it's more prevalent with propane is what I was told, and just the nature of the gas. But yeah, so high CO2, I typically cut it at day 49. If I'm going 63 days, I just let it go ambient. I've tried running like tapering down to like 800 and then 600. And I just like to cut it because I like my flowers finish faster. And really, I'll see like weird new growth sometimes
Yep.
if I don't cut it
Yep.
out.
Yeah.
Especially in the top of my
It's
flowers.
It's killing me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like a revenge.
new green shoots.
Yeah.
You'll see like
Tree piston.
foxtailing's more
Yeah.
prevalent if you keep that CO2 longer. So either 49 or day 56 is usually when I cut it, depending if I'm going 70 or 63 or 72. So or 70, excuse me. So, but yeah, I mean, if you can't, back to this, if you can't get your humidity down to these levels, and again, you want to stay in that 1.3 to 1.5 kPa the last couple weeks of flower. And if like this place, I just finished out in a room. I had to buy more dehus for it because I couldn't get here. I roll in units. I was bringing more. I couldn't get there. I had to stay at 75 degrees all the way to get down to 50%, right? So I could stay in that range. I could not go down to 70 degrees like I normally would, right? So if you're in your rooms and you're noticing rot or you're noticing like, hey, I just can't get this low, you got one of two options. Either add more dehumidification or raise your temperatures a little bit. That's what you have to do to stay in this range. Because this is important. This is important to fight against rot and PM.
What about cutting feedings down extra early for an extra gen steer to help to dry the room out before it lights off?
Yeah, that helps as well. I mean, like,
Because I notice if I don't water 1 hour, it's a lot different than I don't water 2 hours as far as being able to dry that room back before it lights off.
right. So your room should always be set up to take out as much water as you're putting in at the most saturated point, right? One thing I deal with a lot is there's a lot of runs where I irrigate 4 or 5 hours into the night. I have to. If you're in a small pot, you over veg for 4 days too much, dude, you're gonna have a tree that now has to be watered into the night. And that's where I will see some spiking because the dry period, plants want a wet period during the day and they need that dry period at night to dry out, right? And but some of my best runs have came from having to water into the night.
Oh, yeah.
They still do great, but again,
You're playing back in.
go overboard. If you're building out a spot or if you're thinking about it or you're planning, I mean, every single room I've ever done, I've had to go back and add more dehumidifiers.
5%,
Every
yeah.
single one, and anybody that's had to do that knows it sucks ass, especially when you got tables.
Electrical.
I won't even mess with it now. I taste somebody. I'm like, nope, I'm not. I hate it.
I'm there.
It sucks. So adding extra to be able, you want to be able to take you people use the term spaceship a lot because it is. You want to be able to steer wherever you want. Environmentally, you want to be able to go up, down, sideways, left, wherever you want.
So Quest recommends being able to remove all of your humidity, but a lot of people in the industry say 50% is good. Are we happy with 50% water removal, like pints in per pints out?
Yeah. I mean, I calculate my pints per day of what I'm using, and I want to be able to do that plus 25%.
Plus 25?
That's for me personally.
Okay.
I mean, there's, I've had runs in a room like starting out where when I didn't have a canopy as full, I wasn't taking as many pounds, and now my skills have got better. And maybe this has happened to you, or what used to work in a room doesn't work now. Why? Well, maybe you just got better. Now, if you're pulling 3-4 more pounds out of a room, there's that much more water retention and biomass in that room that you now have to fucking take water out of. I mean, it's funny, it's a joke between some of my friends and I. When I gotta shitty run going, it's not up to par, bro, it's easy. It's
Yeah.
easy to take.
It's
And
true,
if I'm
man.
struggling, as much as it sucks, it's usually a good thing.
Yep.
It's like, damn, I got a lot more weight in here because there's a lot more mass, right? And so it's sometimes, as much as it sucks sometimes, even on this last run, I had to bump up to 75. As much as I was pissed off and I was like, I got to spend more money, I'm like, I know it's going to be a good run. There's a lot of weight. There's a lot of weight in there.
Yeah,
Right? A lot more than.
Those rolling 180s don't do shit either.
No, they don't. Most things when you start going down like sub 70, it's tough. You know, your ACs are also going to be running a lot. Those are going to take a lot more moisture out of the air. So a lot of people will calculate their ACs for pints per day. I never do that in a room. The AC is always it's always separate. I'm not going to take that. Yes, it will pull some, but I'd rather just know that that's going to be a little bit extra.
Yeah.
I'm not going to factor in how much my mini split will take out or my 5-ton. I factor those separately. And so yeah, your water pints per day that you're going to be watering at the most saturated point, which is usually during bulk, right? Or you're watering twice a day if you're hand feeding, or you're irrigating all day if you're using drip irrigation. That's going to be probably if I'm pulling 200 gallons out, I need to do that math and make sure that 8 pints a gallon that I'm able to pull out 1,600 pints, So and then I want to pull out a little bit more. So and I'll usually kind of go with what dehues I'm getting, which for me it's usually Quest. Quest 225s, probably now the 335s are sick. The new Quest 225s too. Do you know if those have the variable speed motor in them too?
The 225?
The new 225 that's coming out?
The new one, well, yeah.
Yeah, it's sick. If you guys haven't seen that new 225, we just saw it out at BizCon last week. It's literally like,
Smaller?
it looks just like a small version of that 335 now. Yeah. But I'll usually figure out my pints per day. And then if I'm using like a 250 pint or a 225, I'll usually round down to like the 200 mark. And then that extra 25 pints will again just be extra. Because now I go overboard on dehumidification.
So with a 9-lighter, I have a 9-lighter and I'm doing 4 plants under each light. What size deep should I get?
It depends. Like, do you have any idea how many gallons a day you're feeding? I mean, if you got 9, so are they LEDs?
Yeah, they're LED.
So I'll show you guys some simple math, and this may be not new for some of you. It's a formulation we use when for Athena when we're working with facilities and how much nutrients and how many gallons. Your gallons per day that you're using in a room is super important to know for multiple reasons, from buying fertilizer to dehumidification. So if you don't know that in your rooms, I would highly recommend even just using this simple equation when you go home and figure it out. That way you know roundabouts where you're at. So if you got 9 lights, so we usually equate 1 LED light. So 1 LED, we're going to equate that to about 5 gallons per light per day. That's just an average, okay? If you're under HPS, 7 gallons. Always going to drink more under HPS, side by side. Why? Because the infrared heat. The heat's going to dry everything out a little bit more. This is just a baseline. You could be a little over, a little under, but this is a good baseline that we use. So if you have 9 LEDs, 45 gallons a day is probably what you're feeding. And then I would, if I'm figuring out dehues, I'm gonna round that up to like 50, and then maybe even 60, probably 60 to be safe. I'm gonna add on 25%. For me, I just use simple math, probably go up to 60 gallons. 60 gallons is probably what you're feeding. So if you're feeding 60 gallons, which that's on the high end, but that's where we want to be, 60 gallons, 8 pints, 480, is that my math right?
Yep. So
for you, and it may sound like a lot, because here's the deal. You're not gonna need like the other half of this dehumidification is only gonna be needed the last 2 weeks. And that's what sucks. I literally have rooms where day 49, I go manually crank down like 3 humidifiers and let them bottom everything out. Up until then, at higher temperatures, it's good. So for what I would recommend for you at 480 is I probably get 2 Quest 225s. It's gonna be a little under, but since we averaged way up for a 9-lighter, I mean, most of my 20 light rooms, I have 3 to 4 Quest 225s. So to be safe, and it's overkill, you're only going to use one of those until the end of flower. But at day 49, when you're able to go bottom that other one out, you're gonna love that you have them.
I got 3 225s under 36, and it's not enough.
No, I In a 27 light double-ended room right now, I have 4 Andon 320s and 2 Quest 225s.
Is that working though?
Well, the 4 Andons on paper should have worked, but that's a whole other story. But yeah. And if you need them, I think they still got them on sale. Maybe
We do.
225s.
Yep.
Yeah. So, but yeah, this is a good formulation to use if you're figuring out your gallons per day, but always round up. Always round up. What's
Hey,
up?
brother, can you use a darker marker?
Yes.
Please.
Yep. Sorry.
Oh, you're good, man. You're good. My markers are kind of flaring out.
Pour out the green one.
They want to see.
Spare the alcohol in it.
What's going on, man? There's a few seats in the back. Yes, sir. Get in on the action.
There you go, now we can see it.
All right. That's a good formula to use though, for you guys figuring out your gallons per day. And it's a good thing to figure out too because of what nutrients, how much am I using? I mean, I always advise everyone. I'm like, you know, you don't want to really. I don't like. There's times when I used to go to the grocery every week and buy one bag of whatever. Just plan ahead. You know, you may come in and they're like, hey, the truck's not coming till tomorrow, or who knows what, right? So I like to always have 30 days on stock, every spot, and I stay ahead, and I always sit down and figure out. I actually have an Excel spreadsheet where I can put in the gallons per day, and for Athena, it'll just tell me how much I need of everything for the whole run. You know what I mean? Down to. And if you guys are on specifically Athena, you know, reach out to me.
Yes.
I can always run those numbers for you. Super easy. Actually, we're trying to get that published because it's just easy. You sit down, you can figure out everything you need, and if you don't let's say you don't use cleanse or you use something else for pH, you just take that out. But that will always, and it's based off of this calculation right here. It's what we use internally.
You got to throw that finish in that program.
It is. Yeah, the finish is in there.
Nice.
Yep. Yeah, it's all updated. Yeah, updating feed charts too for all that stuff are online. So, and the thing with the Fade product, real quick, last time I'll touch on that. It is a direct replacement for Core. So, and it's the same price per mixed gallon. So it's not another product. It's not something else we're throwing in for you to buy. It's the same. Your nutrient costs are going to be the same. It's just you're going to use. If you're on a 9-week cycle, 7 of the weeks you're going to be using Core, and 2 of the weeks you're going to be using Fade. And so if you're sitting down and figuring all this out, I love math when it comes to cannabis. I think this, off the top of my head, is 78% of the time you're using Core during a run, and 22% of the time you're using Fade. So you just have to sit down. If you weren't using this product before and you were just using that to the end and tapering down, now you just need to figure out, okay, I'm going to buy a little bit less Core, now I'm going to buy Fade. It's the same cost per mixed gallon.
Now, have you ran Fade yet?
Oh, I've been running for a year. Yeah.
Okay.
We've been. This is something that one of the best things I like about working with Athena is that they put and it's given me a different perspective working for a nutrient company. A lot of times you see something come out on your shelf and you're like, oh, fucking, they probably just came up with this last week. I used to think that, right? Well, maybe that's true for some companies, but dude, we literally spent over a year, I think 16 months, and we have a process that we go through internally where if we bring something to the table, for instance, this was actually pushed by a lot of us that grow, right, with them. It wasn't actually something, we brought it to the table. We started with different products. We started mixing our own to get the perfect finish. And then once we're sold on it, then it has to go up to a commercial level. And we have tester growers for us in the commercial that are going to do it at scale. And then the last step is we got to get into the Jungle Boys facility, and they have to do round after round after round and side by side where everything else is the same, time after time with the same strains to make sure it's actually a product that is gonna benefit the growers.
So you've seen less bud rot?
Less bud rot, just a way better finish overall. I have actually had my first runner LED in a long time where I had zero rot. There's also, we'll talk about bud rot again when we talk about post-harvest procurement.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure does everybody check when they're harvesting? You're looking like, oh, big nug, and you're breaking it apart, right? You're looking, right? Like
PTSD.
that I don't see a lot, right? I've got that under control. A lot of times I won't see it going into the dry room, and I'll see it coming out.
Yep.
Does anybody else see that? Right? Now that's not necessarily something that's happening in your room. That's a whole nother topic we're going to talk about here in a second. Is post-harvest procurement,
Yeah.
treating your dry room like your flower room, right? So, anybody else have any more questions on like the gallons per day, dehumidification, like environmental spikes, anything else that they're struggling or seeing or?
So, spikes, I guess it's kind of, I'm wondering about, like, what is an acceptable spike? Like, when do I have to really focus and say, this is gonna cause a real problem with humidity spike lights off? So I'm watching it, and if it can spike for under an hour, I'm like, okay, but if it's taking 2, 3, then I'm like, this room needs to change, or we're gonna have real problems.
Yeah, I don't like to see spikes for more than like 10, 15 minutes.
Okay.
You know,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
lights off, like that, it doesn't take much. And powder mildew is another one thing that Sean brought up, that's huge. And it's the season for it. It's all of a sudden, it's like any other, you got seasons, I swear, for pests. And now we're starting to get I got PM popped up in this room. I just talked to a friend yesterday. I'm not gonna say he's one of the best growers I know, and he's, an organic guy, and he does a great job. And he's like, bro, I got PM spiked. I haven't seen this shit in 5 years. It's just that season right now. It's cold, it's clammy. We don't have, we're not in the deep freeze yet. Humidity's dropping. Your rooms are your rooms, which most of us are probably not in, decked out new build commercial facilities, where you're probably in a retransformed bedroom or a tent or a barn. And I can tell you, I've grown a lot of barns and garages, and they sweat like as soon as it starts getting cold outside. Your walls are sweating.
Yeah.
If most of you walk around the perimeter of your room, whatever exterior walls you're sharing, you're probably seeing all the condensation on the concrete. And your attics are probably getting a little nasty this time of year, and that's just the time of the season for it, right? And spikes. You can have the healthiest plants, you can use all the sterilization in your room, you can do all that stuff, but if your environment's not under control, do PM. Some genetics, are stronger than others. Mac 1, anybody ever grown Mac 1 or Mac 1 crosses? Bro, I got a plant sitting outside a Mac 1 plant that's all dead and shriveled, and everything around it has PM, and that thing, dude, it's so resilient. Now, there is a genetic piece of that, but for the most part, if your environment's under control, you won't see it, but if you start to slip, and this time of year, you'll start having more spikes because of the moisture inside the room, because of the outside conditions. And Michigan's we have seasons, right? So like dew points are changing, and it's like, I personally, I like growing, people may disagree if your rooms aren't set up right. Summer, give me 90 degrees outside and hot. My rooms are so dialed. When we start getting into these cold environments and the change of seasons, and it's swinging, it fluctuates, and everything for me, it stays outside of the rooms dry. You start getting into the winter, and it rains, and then it snows, and then it's 50 in the afternoon, and it's freezing rain at night. That's Ohio too, right?
Yeah, it is.
So
So I spray foam my room, so is my chances of seeing PM less?
Spray foam is awesome. Yeah, spray foam. So spray foam is always the go-to if you have the option. Spray foam will help.
Is controlling your outside environment.
Yeah.
If you go from a basement grow to out in a garage, and you pack that boy, your outside environment may be -20.
Yep.
And then it may go up to 120. Whereas you're growing in the basement, your outside environment's 72 all year round. You know what I mean? So
No,
big differences.
The environment surrounding the walls of that room are huge. So spray foam's always going to be the go-to if you have the option, 100%. If you're doing a new build, insulate the concrete. 2 inches of expanded foam board should go under and up the side walls, because even if you spray foam everything, your concrete slab will still sweat. I go overkill, but my newer spots, I'll have in-floor heat. My slab stays consistent because I'll get, and it's a safety issue. People that work in my gardens, your floors get all clammy and shit and slippery, and sweating's a huge deal, and it just leads to more of these issues and spikes, lights off, and then irrigation times are when you're going to see your biggest spikes. It doesn't in HID rooms. You're not going to see big spikes when you irrigate. It's so dry. I'm pumping moisture into my rooms almost till like week 3 in my HPS rooms. You know what I mean? I'm using humidifiers. It's the exact opposite. And there's something to be said for that, right? But biomass wise, going back to this HPS versus LED thing, I can pull way more. Why? Way more weight under LEDs. Is the flower is good? I'm not sold either way yet. I just think HID, like, it's what I know. It's what, if you've been growing for pre the LED area. A lot of people, they only know LEDs. You know, it's all, I mean, they've been out long enough now, or if you start growing over the last 4 to 5 years, that maybe that's all you know. I still know HID way better. I know it. I know what I'm gonna face. I know that, and it dries out the room, and that's the number one reason why I still love it. It just dries out the room, and LEDs don't do that yet. I'm sure they're working on it. I mean, every company under the sun is changing shit every freaking week, it seems like. They got something new. It's like, we were talking the other day, you can buy an LED light, it's like buying a fucking TV now. You buy one, and 4 months later, you're like coming back like, bro, you couldn't tell me about the upgraded one with the IR and the purple and the fucking... Yeah, exactly. It's like, you buy one, you almost gotta know, like, it's gonna, they're innovating every fucking month, it seems like. And that's follow the companies, you know, follow the companies in the LED lighting industry that are doing a lot of trials. That's all I can say. Like, I am huge into, I'm picking LEDs apart. I am running so many different brands, and it's because I think that there is a future in that. You know, California at the end of the year, you're no longer allowed to use HPS. If you're and I'm gonna tell you, every other state is gonna follow suit over the next few years. So that means that you can still run them if you have them, right? If you're grandfathered in, you can still run them. But at a certain point, I mean, I want to say it may take 5 to 10 years, but there ain't going to be no more HID. You know, unless you're going directly getting pallets from China, and like, you know, it might become a point where if you got HID flour, you're getting paid, you know, just to say it's HID if it's outlawed, you know, it's going to be like back to prohibition times. but the future is in LED. I mean, our power grid, I mean, I don't know any of you guys from like Warren area. Oh, dude, their power grid's fucking hit from fucking commercial cannabis. I mean, it is dented, the power grid, and so I think there's a huge future in it for a reason.
Like, I work at a grocery store there, so I know.
Right.
I know how to
Watch, just pay attention to the people that are actually testing their lights with growers round after round. That's what I'm really watching. I mean, the marketing and all that flashy shit's cool, and like some of them look awesome, but like really, it's like, how are they testing these spectrums under plants? What's really going on? And
what seems to be the one you like?
Yeah, who do you like? Who's the one that you see get the most test?
It's tough right now, man. I mean, I don't want
Two
to.
names.
So like, I really like a group out of Ohio, spec grade LED, super nice light, like 7-year warranty. Like, dude, you hold the light. The lights are built right. Really good company behind their team. I'm running a few small rooms on them. Just super solid guys. Always willing to learn. They like, we work together. They take my feedback, and I'm like, they just made me a custom spectrum. I'm like, give me an HPS spectrum and LED. They're like, well, we don't think it will work because of this, and this. They're like, well, we don't even smoke weed, so whatever you want, we'll give it. You know what I mean? So they, you know, they're willing to, and that's really what some people, you know, some companies just they claim they got it figured out, and that's cool. I believe I've ran one yet that's come close in quality to HPS. You know, for me personally, maybe, I mean, I've seen some great LED weeds. So Spec Grade's one of them. They're coming out with some new things that are cool. There's a company out of Canada called Green Machine. I just got some of their lights. Just again, they're on the cutting edge of stuff that's coming out that's new. You know, they're dual driver. All their reds and their infrared are on a separate driver. Think Grow is another great company. You know, there's a reason that company never comes down in price, doesn't have a sub $1,000, and it's because they got a very good tunable light. I think tunability is going to be huge in LEDs. You know, what's that? I've never ran under Gavitas, man. Another good thing to talk to about LEDs is going to be your store owners or your store workers too. Like, what are you getting all the RMAs on? I don't want none of that shit. You know what I mean? Like, you know, I mean, everybody's gonna have a percentage of failures with any electronic, right? But like, you know, to what degree? So I think working with your store owners and networking and talking with a lot of people like what's been working. I mean, it's why I still run HPS in a lot of rooms, because they just fucking dinosaur work. It's why I still have Quest 225s almost, because they just work. You know, I keep the maintenance up on them. I change the filters, and they just fucking work. You know, on paper, there's other companies that are better, but I go what works for me. You know, so Spec Grade, Think Grow, I really like that Green Machine out of Canada. Really cool dude. He came over and he's got a great light. I'm gonna throw some up soon. There's some one-off lights, Alias, a company out of Canada. They got a really good greenhouse light. I like a lot. There's a lot of, like, Science is a really cool company. I've heard recently they've had a lot of RMAs, but that's a tunable light. I know a lot of guys that really tweak out with the LEDs. That tunability, I think, is going to be huge, right? But I mean, if you're looking to spend $20, $30, $50, $100,000 depending on your outfit on LEDs, I don't even know what I'd go with. Because again, I feel like I'm going to buy it, and then 6 months later, I'm going to be like, bro, he just came out with the newest technology. And you know, it's tough. It's tough. I would hold out as long as you can, to be honest with you, unless you need something. I think that's why the budget lights are so big. You know, I mean, price point's huge with LEDs. People want, you know, $500 to $700 lights because, and honestly, if I was doing a big, I might just go with something standard, like whatever's gonna work in the meantime until they figure shit out over the next couple years. You know,
rates, good customer
Good
service.
reviews.
Yep, good reviews. I think the warranties behind these companies are huge. You know, you could offer a 7-year warranty, but how the fuck I even know you're gonna be around 7 years? You know, like who's been around, who's got a good, because everything's going to fail. It's you know, there's, you know, like,
Hordelux went out of business.
Yeah.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep. There's, yeah, it's a rough time right now to be. I mean, you know, it's a rough time to be in the equipment is sales are. I mean, we're not building out right now nationwide. That all happened over the last 2 years. Yep. I still have a lot. I still have a lot of Lux. My original Luxes are still solid. I don't have any issues with them. Yeah, my original Luxes are. I mean, obviously though, I don't.
What, the 645?
645s are a solid light, man. I mean, I still have a lot of them that are good. I had a lot of problems with the 860s. Had a lot of problems with the last generation after the sale. I got some of the 645s, had issues with those. But yeah, I mean, DEs are going away. I mean, Lux DEs are done at the end of the year. Gavita DEs are done at the end of the year.
Yeah.
So now you're down to what, them $49 boys?
Yeah.
Damn them all day, what?
Awesome.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if you're planning on building out, because we got a lot of guys that are asking me the same questions, and they're like, hey, we need 1,000 LEDs. What do you recommend? And I'm like, man, I don't even know if I want my name on that. Like, I mean, I'll come show you. I'll tell you what's working for me. But I mean, the Spec Grade though, they're an industrial lighting company. The thing I like about them is like they've already been doing LEDs they're in arena lighting and street lighting and like bigger. So like, if cannabis doesn't work out, they're fucking good. You know what I mean? Like they're already doing. So there's some comfort in that if I was buying stuff, because I'm like, okay, they're gonna be here. Like, you know, Gavita will probably be here. Maybe, hopefully. I don't know. Who's gonna be here? I don't know. I don't really know. I can tell you when we were on, those of you that were at MJ BizCon this year, dude, half of that venue was LED manufacturers. It was insane. I've never seen so many people that thought they had the next best light. And it was just insane.
Talking to them all, you know what I mean? And they're like, you know, we're asking, oh, what's next?
I'm in at that same 250, and then I'm going up 50 a day. 50, 300, 350, 400, 450, and then I'll usually sit at about 450. And then when I come into flower, I continue that 50 ppfd increment. Is if they can take it every day, I'm going to do it every day. If I start to see a little, oh shit, I'm hot, they're kind of backing away and curling down, I'll back it off 50, and then I'll sit there, and I like to creep up and hit these. Like under HID, I like to be at that 750 by like day 10. You know, so I'm really stepping up, and
Like
same thing with
10% increments every day.
as much as they can take it. You know what I mean?
LED?
Same thing. I'm coming in about the
Day 10
same,
up.
but it just may take me until day 14 to step up to that 850 to a 900. You know what I mean?
Does that coincide with the EC of the block as well going in?
I mean, honestly, going in, it depends on what I'm in. I mean, I run higher plant count in smaller pots, and typically I run 3, and then as I step up, I may need to feed more. You know what I mean? I come in at 3 EC typically. If I'm running like Pro line, if I'm running blended or, you know, a liquid line, I'm usually at like 2 EC, and then I'll step it up as needed. You know, some strains, they want more from the get. Some strains want less and then want more later. You know, I mean, I think anybody that's growing right now is probably running 9 million strains per room, like I am, just to, you know, have that variety, and it sucks. It's terrible.
It's unfeasible.
It is. Like it's terrible. I do these pheno hunts, everything's on the same zone, and I got to keep running stuff because I'm like, man, that was kind of tight, but didn't even get a fair shot because it wasn't drinking as much as everything else, so it got over water.
So many variables.
Yeah, it's tough. It really is tough. I love irrigation, and my coworkers probably disagree with me, but I still, man, if I had the time, the availability, hand watering still king. You know, for me, even it like, and if I had the time to like still keep the plant count the same and hand water instead of irrigate, I love hand watering, man. You know, it forces you to be in the room with your plants.
Yeah.
I mean, I run a lot of rooms that I only go there once or twice a week, and they do very well. But there's something about being in your rooms every day with those plants, you know, and hand watering forces you to do that. Straps you down, you know. So,
Yeah.
so yeah, I wanna get into this topic because I think this is gonna be a big one. Post harvest procurement. It ties in with a lot of. Yeah, I'll just speak from my own experience. I can't tell you how many times I've had a room that's looking at, I mean, some of the best runs I've ever had in the room didn't equate to my best flower I've ever had because I fucked something up. And from the day I chopped to the day it went to the bag. I think this is something in our industry that's hugely not talked about enough. I know I see a lot of rooms, my friends, you know, places I go work, consult. I mean, I got some close friends of mine where I'm like, they'll bring me, I'll go in the room at day 60 and I'm like, bro, this shit is, you know, like, you killed it. And then I'm like, yeah, and then I go over, you know, 3 weeks later and I'm like, let me see. I'm like, bro, what the fuck happened, bro? And what happened, you know, and it's happened to me too.
It just did it.
It's happened to me too. And drying too quick is a big one. Drying too quick. Back to what we talked about earlier, a lot of this stuff ties in together. Environmental controls and post-harvest are huge. So I personally try to stick to, I want everything. When I'm drying, I'm going into my dry room at 60 degrees for the first 2 days. I like to sit at about 50% humidity for the first day or two, right? I just want to try to get everything stabilized. I don't want spikes because you'll have the same fucking spike issues in your dry room, right? If you try to sit at 60 and 60 the first 2 days, that all that moisture's in there, it'll creep up. You never want your humidity higher than your freaking temperature in your dry room because that's what we talked about earlier. Bud rot. It will happen in your rooms, you know. Airflow is important, but you don't want, you know, I've gone to some facilities and they got max 16-inch fans blowing their weeds like stuck to the walls. Seriously, you know, and like you want fluttering, you want good air movement. I like Wassermans in my dry rooms. They suck from the ground up. Everything flutters real nice. You want subtle air movement. You want good spacing on all your racks or however you're doing things. Airflow is really key. I like taking things here. Now in the legal market, I know guys that are doing like 60-40 because they gotta zap it for the first couple days. I don't like to go that low. Jesus Christ, I'm making a mess. I don't like to go that low, but I do like to do about 60-50 for the first couple days. And then I start creeping back up. I'll go back up to 55. And then once it's stabilized and I can sit it, I usually sit at like 58, 60. That allows for a little swing up to 60 when that dehu's shutting on and off, but it doesn't get too crazy. Now, if you try to go in at 60, 60 and your room isn't dialed in and you don't have zone dehumidification, meaning you need more than one dehu. If you only have one, when that fucking thing shuts off at 60, it has a hot start delay. It will not run for a few minutes and you will be spiking way up into the 70s, and that's no good. You got something real quick?
So I'm at same thing, but now I'm having a problem keeping it humid, right? After day 4, now I got 3 humidifiers in my room. I can't keep it for 14 days.
And that's what we're going to talk about. So it's your trim room or your post procurement room. For me, I have a separate dry and a separate trim room, but those rooms have to be just as dialed in as my flower rooms. And I will tell you, I used to be this guy, and it's okay if you are or not this person. If you are, it's okay, because I was this guy for years. I put all my money into flower rooms, and I was drying and vegging and doing everything in like tents. And I have like 30 lighters, and I'm like trying to do everything else, because all my money was like flower. Well, then I realized that like, yeah, I can grow the best weed in those rooms. They're all dialed in, and then I'm trying to dry in a fucking tent, and it's fucking sweating, and the weed looks like shit. So all this money I spent to produce the flower, if it's not ending up in the bag, being able to be smoked and fired, all that work was for nothing. It's all. So I, about 5 years ago, went back and spent a lot of time in my veg, upgrading things, making it bigger, better, bigger moms, more room, and biggest thing, I mean, that cost me a lot of money, but making a dry room that was as dialed in as my flower room, but it's so fucking worth it. This room that I have now, I can set it wherever I want and never moves, and I just call it my cold room. And I can take it wherever I want it. My typical sitting conditions for stored flower, so I'm gonna sit at 60, 50, creep up, and I like to then sit at around 60, 58 for about 14 to 20 days. I do a long on the stalk dry.
The longer you
The
do that, the more flavor and
Yup.
aroma you're
Yup, you know, there's, and again, I'm not an expert on a lot of this shit, but you know, your terpenes, your terpenes are, you gotta stop them in their tracks, and cold temperatures are gonna do that, right? You got something?
I know you're gonna get to it, right? But it's like, so then I go 14 days, 60, and then it's into the tote. How long are we leaving it in the tote before we trim?
Yeah, we'll go
I
through
know
this.
we're gonna
We'll
get
go
there.
through this whole process.
I'm sorry.
It's all good. So we'll sit there for like, and again, it's genetics are different. If a bud's fucking huge and super dense, it's probably gonna take a little bit longer. If you're running GMO, shit dries out a little bit faster. It's more sparsy. You know what I mean? I don't wait till my shit is crispy dry. And again, there is a million. You can go on YouTube and there's 9 million ways that people tell you to do shit. I'm not saying this is the way. Some people wait till everything's snapping. I don't do that. You know, I still want just a little. I want my shit to be like styrofoam. I want a little crunch on the outer, but I still want it to puff back out. I don't want it to just crumble at all. I do not want. I'd rather go on the little bit moist side compared to dry. Dry flour, you cannot. This is the season. Michigan popcorn packs. You're gonna see them everywhere. For real. Popcorn fart dry, because the humidity outside now is, once we get to winter, is gonna be fucking 20-30%, right? And
So how do we get that back?
right, exactly. So you're in Michigan, you're gonna have to watch when you're drying in your dry room during the summer from March until October, you're gonna battle humidity the whole time, right? Your dehues, you're never gonna have to, bring in a humidifier. Now you post October, when the humidity outside starts dropping, you will start needing humidifiers, right? So what he just touched on, usually about for me in my dry room, about day 5 to 7 during the winter right now, I have to have a humidifier, right? So I have humidifiers in my rooms, dehumidifiers in my rooms, because I want to be able to take that room. It actually has to be more precise than my flower room. I cannot, because you got to think about it. And I've never put it in this context before. We spend, by the time you get into the dry room, you got what? Most of us got 3 months of work, from clone to veg, sometimes longer, flower, maybe even more than that. You do all this fucking work, you slave, to then slip up at the end. And I did it for years. I'm guilty as hell. I did it for years. So make sure you're dialed in, humidifiers, because you're gonna need them in the winter. Come March, you won't need them anymore. April, you won't need them. When the humidity outside starts going back up, you won't need them anymore. So you're gonna utilize those humidifiers. I personally I let mine fight each other. So I'll set my humidifier usually at like 60%. I'll set my dehues at like 58%. So it just stays. That's how you get your chart looks like this. It doesn't go up and down and all over the place, and there's not a lot of spikes. I personally, after things are ready, let's say I'm going in and I'm, and I whole plant hang, I branch hang, all that stuff. Again, that's all preference. And for me, it's how it comes out of the trellis. If I can get you out in one piece, you're fucking going out in one piece. If I can't, then you're not. When it's ready to be trimmed, when I feel that things are right for me, we buck everything down. I don't do the branches into totes. I know a lot of guys that do. I know guys that take the branches right out of there and go right to trimming. Like they take branch by branch and trim. It works great. Their stuff looks good too. That's not how I do it. I buck everything down into totes and right off, and it's in that same environment. My weed never leaves till you pick it up for me, and never leaves, and never goes over 60 degrees ever. Ever. My trimmers hate trimming for me because they're in 55-degree rooms.
Absolutely.
Yep. Yeah, they don't like it, but I can't. I spend too much time and too much money. Everything in this industry is going up besides the price of weed. You know what I mean? For real. It's all the consumables, the power, everything is going up. So I put too much hard work to fuck it up at the end anymore. I'm very anal about post procurement. So it's never gonna go above 60 degrees. We're gonna shuck it down into totes, and then I hand trim everything that's worthy. If it's not worthy, I usually just throw it to oil. I don't even fuck with it, personally. If it's worthy of being hand trimmed, The process is shuck it into a tote. We're not going to de-leaf. We're just going to shuck down. We're also going to break down and look for bud rot again. So all those tops, anything is going to be gone through. That's our QA. My QA point, my first QA point on my product is at shucking. You get into the rooms, we set it. I don't really mess with it when it's doing its thing in the dry room. I will go through and look at things and feel some buds out. And then my first QA checkpoint is my people know when we're shucking. That's when we're breaking the buds down. I'm not gonna put a bud in there that's that big into a bag, right? I'm gonna break all that down, get as much stem material as I can out, look for bud rot, look for anything funky, get them into totes. I like to put bin liners inside the totes, get the product in there, and then I'll close them up once I'm done. They get closed up and they get burped every single day. I personally like to leave 1 to 2 weeks unshucked flour in totes before I trim, and that depends on when my trimmers are scheduled to come in. Right. I have to the ladies that I use who are the best for what I like, I have to schedule the day I flip a room, I have to schedule my trimming or they won't be available. The day I flip, right? Mm-hmm. So so it may be 1 week depending on when I have to schedule them. It may be up to 2 to 3 weeks. Right now I got shit's been sitting in a tote for 3 weeks and they're coming Monday. And I don't give a fuck, it's fire. Yeah. I tumble it and I let it start to dry in the totes. And then when they come and they do what they have to do, that shit is ready to go into a bag and be sold.
What about how many pounds per tote? You got a limit for how many pounds you're willing to fill
No,
in that tote?
I don't go by weight because all the strains vary. I want my totes filled about 50%.
50%.
Yep, 50%. And I burp them every day.
Shuffle
Yeah,
it.
you see problems with a full tote. I just had fucking 5 full totes, and then halfway I cured it perfectly, but I got 15 pounds in the tote, and they resettled, and now they smell like shit.
Yeah,
I think I had too much in the tote.
I like to keep a good air gap. If I'm using those standard 27-gallon totes, halfway full is usually about 8 to 10 inches.
Yep.
I think those things are 14 inches tall.
Yep.
And I like that air gap in there. And then every day I'm going inside and with my gloves on, and I don't want to disturb and shake the fuck out of them and try to come flat.
Right.
I like to just go through my hands and gently stir the bottom to the top.
Yep.
Let it sit on open I put the lids on sideways and stack everything for about a half hour in the same room. Never goes outside of this. I'll come back in, put the lids back on.
So would you say that would work for a legal market facility too? That's where,
See where your testing's at.
Yeah.
I mean, the testing changes the game, and it's. I know a lot of my guys that follow some friends of mine in the legal follow this very closely. The only thing different that they're doing is they usually tank those first couple days to really kind of get any moisture. And I get it. I mean, like the legal market's a tough spot to be in, bro. I mean, it's really tough to anybody. Like I give anybody in the legal market mad props for putting their product on the table. There's a lot of people in this industry that talk shit, and whether it's a grower or your product, and like I'll always put my product on the table. Do I think it's always the best? No, but I'll throw it down. Let's smoke. I mean, when we do events, tons of people will come up and we'll always throw it down on the table in the legal market. I mean, a lot of growers in the legal market get a lot of hate, but like anybody that's willing to step up to the fucking plate and put their bag on the table, mad props. Whether it's good, bad, or otherwise. So, but what you're gonna do to get that weed to pass testing, I mean, bro, that's a whole nother, that's a 2-day. I mean, I could talk for hours on like just proper SOPs, dude. I mean, in the legal market, the thing I stress is just, you've gotta your facility has to be written, and it may take you a year to dial in all your SOPs, but you have to get a program that works and fucking stick to that and never sway. And it's all about prevention, from IPM to everything in a legal facility. It's about staying ahead of the problem, right? So most of the guys in legal that I know follow something different from, I do know the people that are really concerned about that, plastered on the wall with a fan, they're hitting it so hard, their weed sucks to smoke. You know what I mean? Let's just put it that way. If your weed dries out too fast, I'm sure anybody's been there. I've had those days where something's messed up in my dry room, and I've walked in and I went to sleep and it was 58% humidity. I wake up in the morning, maybe I lost power or whatever. It's 30% in there, and everything is crisp. You can rehydrate it, and like it'll be all right a little. But any time that happens, you took a little life out of that. You know what I mean? So. And then again, so if we get it in the totes, we're shucking. Now the trimmers are ready. The trimmers are coming. It's never, again, my dry rooms actually are 55 degrees and 50% humidity. So it's actually gonna go colder, and they don't like it, but like I work too hard. I tell them all the time, I'll pay you more. And I do. I just pay them a little premium. I'm like, you got to deal with my environmental conditions. I
Everyone
cannot
does.
work too hard for this shit. And then after it's trimmed, it goes right into a turkey bag. It gets sealed up. It gets knotted. It goes right back up into the cold storage room at that same temperature. And then I usually let it sit for a week or two, and I don't even open it. At that point, if I get that 1 to 2 weeks in that tote, or that weed is already done, I don't need to continue. Now it's ready for long-term storage, and I just knot them and put them in a tote. And then usually after the first week, when they've been in that bag and they went through this 3 to 4 week process of getting shucked, drying slowly, that's when you open the bags. You're just like, holy shit! Like it smacks you in the face, right? So yeah, that's the biggest.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I vacuum sealed mine this year,
Mhm.
threw them in the freezer.
Yep.
That works okay?
Yeah, for long-term storage. I mean, I know a lot of people, legal facilities too, that get backed up on flour that use, freezers and stuff like that. If you're going in a freezer, for sure, you got to vacuum seal, just like any meat or anything that goes in the freezer, because you will get freezer burn.
My recommendation is at least a couple vacuum seals.
Yep.
Yeah, it's
Triple
done
seal.
good.
Even with the premium vacuum
Yep.
seals, you know what I mean? I would go
It's in
maybe a
vacuum
couple
seal and then
layers,
put in
2,
freezer
3
bags.
layers
Yep.
on those.
Yeah, it works. I will say that I used to vacuum seal and freezer a lot of stuff, and I do think long term it works for keeping the color and everything about the flour the same. When it's brought back up to room temperature, and I feel like the smoke is always not, like the terps are not quite the same, but it's a lot of, sometimes you got to do it. It's better that than having shit sit. You can't leave stuff out for months and months on end. At some point, like anything else, it has to go in long-term
Probably
storage.
let it sit outside of the refrigerator or freezer a little while before also opening it.
Yep.
Yeah, because if not,
Yep.
point it's gonna get.
Yep,
moist
yep,
inside the
sweating
flour.
and you get,
Right.
moisture, any kind of
Yeah.
ice or anything in there. It's definitely, but this is a huge topic, man. A lot of, and I see people rush and they're just like, I got another, the other thing that we can tie into this too is like not taking a room the full length. Like I got another round of clones already. Fucking, we're chopping today, and I'm like, bro, like you're not there. So you just did 3 months of work to chop early, and now you're good. You just went into the mids category automatically. You know what I mean? In this market, I'm not saying it's not good weed. You didn't do a good job. It still may smoke decent, but if there's different classes in today's market. There's really, well, I see 2 classes. There's you got top tier flour and everything else.
Yep.
And when you go into that everything else, bro, that's when you're in a rough spot right now. You're getting gutted. You know what I mean? And I've been there. I'm still there. I still have. I will run so many goddamn strains, and some of the stuff people talk up, and I'm like, bro, this shit sucks. You know what I mean? Like, this is no.
It's a decent mint.
Exactly. It's an ever evolving. All of us as cultivators too. We got to stay open minded. Like, I'm always picking shit from people, and like, even if I talk to people here or facilities I go to, like I can't tell you how many like floor worker people I've talked to that are like, oh, you're so awesome. And I'm like, I just learned way more from you. So thanks. You know what I mean? Like staying open minded and really being able to pivot and turn and abandon old ideas and explore new ideas in this market's huge. You know what I mean? It really is.
Work hard.
So, yeah, for sure.
Never stop trying to learn.
100%. Anybody else got any other questions on post-harvest stuff?
Yeah, so what you're saying is pretty much like a month and a half dry.
For me, it's literally like I just harvested a room. We harvested some rooms a week ago, and they'll be ready to go to market the second week of January.
Okay.
Yeah, for me. Listen, I used to rush and be like, oh shit, this guy, if he doesn't buy from me, he's gonna buy from me. I don't do that anymore.
No, well,
I'm like, bro, I got fire. If I know my batch coming down is fire, bro, you all can fucking wait on me. And that should be everybody's mentality. For real. You know what I mean? I ain't fucking gonna rush my shit to catch a sale and turn everything into, and I don't do it.
So I'm running into a situation where I have 3 different rows, and every row is a different strain. So the one row finished early. I put that in there into the dry room about 4 days ago. Is it okay for me to add fresh flour into that room, or do I need to let that whole thing finish? Before I add
No.
new
I mean
flour?
that's gonna happen. That happens to me. Again, if you're staying within this range, you know what I mean. In this range, you're good. You're fine. That happens to me a lot too.
Should you bring it down a few points when you bring that new flour?
It should be stabilized by that point because you're bringing it in incrementally. It shouldn't swing as much.
After that
You're bringing in
3
200 pounds of wet flour at once.
we do it.
It's going to be a lot different than if you're bringing in 30 pounds every every 4 days, it's not gonna swing near as
Right,
much. It's
right.
just stay.
2 weeks after, you're good, bring it in.
Yeah.
At least for me, when I've done that, I usually put one of those rolling DQs just to help out, keep everything as much.
Yep.
By the new stuff.
Yeah, zone, if you don't have like, even back there, when you're talking about your 9-lighter, if you already have a room that's built and like, you don't need to go like permanently mount more stuff, just get like something else that can stabilize, like a roll in. Get a roll in, roll it into your room. I don't think I have one room, whether it's a dry room or any kind of room that only has one DU.
Right.
Because they will always stop and then hot start. So I always like to have a couple offset. And they just continually run, and it keeps things stable.
Well, so that brings up another question then. You said offset, so what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to sync them with my Troll Master. So that way the Troll Master controls them off and on, but that's not gonna offset them. That doesn't matter, right? As long as the Troll Master's reading the hot start delay.
Yep. Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
I don't use in my dry rooms and shit. I don't use Troll Master. I literally use manual settings on the humidifiers and keep them off. I stand in there for 10 minutes. I mess with the dials. I sit there. I feel the room. I mess with it. I dial it in, and then I set it. Yeah, the manual dials are the shit, bro. I love manual. Troll Master and all the environmental controls. And that's another thing. If you guys ain't calibrating sensors every week, you guys got fluke meters here yet? Get a fluke meter. Get a fluke meter.
For temp and humidity.
For temp and RH calibration, I have one. They're expensive. They're like $300 to $400. Dude, I mean, like, I don't know either if they are. I mean, but if your any sensors you have should be calibrated weekly.
You recalibrate them every week?
Every week,
Holy
I
shit.
calibrate them.
Okay.
Yep, I at least check. Doesn't mean I actually calibrate, but I'm putting that meter in there and I hang it right
got
next
it.
to the sensor at the same spot,
I got
and I
it.
give it 10 minutes and I watch. And if it's off by more than like a point, I just go over
One
and quick.
point?
I'm always.
I got 5 points difference, but it's always 5.
Yeah,
So-
as long as it's consistent.
Yeah.
Can you also just average it out with multiple hydrometers?
Yeah, I have fluke meters and then I have the cheapo things. I have tons of these.
Yes.
All over the
That-
place.
Oh, yeah.
All over the place.
Those are the ones that are 5 off.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I have those all over, and they'll always be a little bit
Yeah, of
off.
course,
But you just want to make sure things are somewhat consistent.
Oh,
Wow. Does both.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on the humidity packs for like long term?
The Bovita.
Yeah.
The terps?
Yeah.
I swear by it.
Yeah, I mean they work. It's another one of those things where they work, but
They take the term that idea,
I don't like any of that shit.
Right.
I just
try to keep it the same from day one.
yeah, and two, like for my personal flour, like I brought some flour. Some of it's 2 weeks into a jar, just got trimmed. Some of it's been in a jar for 3 months. You know, my 3 months in a jar kept in this. All my personal flour, I have a wire shelf in this room, and it sits in jars in that same. As long as it's kept there, after 3 months is usually 3 to some strains. I can even almost get up to 6 months before I really start noticing, like, all right, man, this shit's kind of,
Yeah.
So
going
you don't
out.
use dry packs in any of your stuff?
No.
Okay.
No, I used to be like oh shit, I flash dried fucking
Yeah,
when my
right,
shit wasn't dialed in and
right.
fucking stuffed those things out like 10 in a
Sure.
bag trying to wet paper
Open
towel.
for miracle.
Yeah, back in the day we used to do like the lemon peels and the orange peels, and I'm gonna get some different scent on my flour and rehydrate at the same time. Yep.
Works great.
The goal is to never need those. Like a lot of other things in the industry, I think they're just there in case we fuck up.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I got a question for you.
I thought they were
A
gods.
lot
Yeah,
of people
when I
say
first
it's
seen them,
just
so-
yeah. Do you think it's more of the post harvest?
I mean, listen, man. That's something again. Like, I've never had a credible person that and I hate to say this, respect as a cultivator that's ever brought anything up to me about like terps. Your genetics and your environment and all these SOPs are the most important thing to your terps and your flower. I don't care what you grow with. You know what I mean? I never have. I have rooms right now on GH, and I just ran drip, and I run everything. And as long as this shit's dialed in, the flower's always fire. You know, I mean, for me, it's consistency. I want consistency, and the nutrient that I'm using, I want it to be available. I don't want to have to fucking run all over God's green earth to try to find it. I want I want the consistency, especially with salts, to be consistent. A lot of other companies I used over the years, be great, and then I get fucking their bases and they're gooey and they don't dissolve, and I got fucking pH fallout, and that's more important for me personally. And am I saying I get questions all the time about, hey, can I dump primer fire in the end? I'm gonna give more chirps. Hey, can I do this?
Yeah.
Do whatever you want. That's awesome. You know what I mean? And I've smoked some really good flour, and I've used to make a lot of my own recipes. But my best flowers come from absolutely keeping it. I believe in the KISS method. I keep it simple. You know, I keep it super simple. Like I grow organically too. I don't grow just with Athena, and I do living soil, and I don't add anything. I don't do turp teas. I don't do none of that shit. I do soil, and that's it. Now our turp tea is awesome, and I know other organic guys argue with me. That's cool. Whatever works. Whatever you're gonna do. Personally, it's either for me. It's you're either running sterile or you're not. I run salts. I run sterile. I don't use any microbial life. I run high oxidizers, high ORP in my root zone, and I don't mix the two. In my organic rooms, I don't run sterile, and I depend on microbial life.
Man,
You know?
I'll tell you this, I've been in this industry for a long time, all over the country, humbled many times, man. I work on the wholesale side of this, so I've been in some of the first commercial places in the US, you know what I mean? All across the country. I've seen people grow with everything, every style of way. There's good weed, there's bad weed, there's people that are doing it right, there's people that think they're doing it right. You know what I mean? When you get it all down, it don't matter what you're using. You know what I mean? Like these nutrients are created by people that are smarter than all of us.
It's all scientists.
These lights are created by people that are all smarter than us. You know what I mean? So.
Absolutely.
And we'll talk about cloning, last subject we're gonna top on, as long as everybody's good on the post-procurement stuff. And I'll be here afterwards, we're gonna eat and smoke, and I'm gonna be hanging out for a little while, so we can talk more and more. And again, if any of you guys, just real quick, and then what we just talked about I still have a room where I do all that shit every run. I'm all about R&D. I have a room that I literally dump new shit on. I go back to recipes I used to use years ago. I add this at day 30, and I still just see the best consistency out of it when I just keep it simple and I just run salts and that's it. And I just taper properly and I keep all my SOPs in place. That's where I get the most consistent flour. You know what I mean? Personally, for me.
Can I ask you what mil per gallon cleanse you're running?
I run almost 10 mils all the way through. One spot I have to run up to 20 in veg to get my ORP where I want it. I measure ORP.
Yeah, so I'm at 6.
Yeah. So it's again, it's not about how much you're using. It's about for me, it's about what my ORP level is. Right? ORP, it has to be above 450 to kill pythium and to keep the root zone sterile.
Can you explain ORP?
It's oxygen reduction potential in your root zone. So it's pretty much like we're gonna keep those roots oxygenated and open, right? And you have to hit a certain level. You have to hit a certain level in your root zone, and it all depends on your starting water chemistry. And I'm not a chemist, so but from what I understand, working with chemists at Athena, everybody's starting water in this nation is different.
Yes.
You know, Detroit water out of the tap is actually fucking amazing.
It is.
You know what I mean? It's fucking amazing. I just tested up facilities and that they called me, the lab we work with, and they're like, this was where, Detroit? They're like, this is the fucking best water we've ever seen. It's fucking hilarious. Like, sure it is in Flint, you know. But now if you're in Flint, I don't know, maybe you need fucking a gallon of, maybe you need half a gallon to a gallon of cleanse. I don't fucking know.
Is there a way to measure that?
Yeah, you get an ORP meter.
ORP meter.
Yeah, you get an
And
ORP
test
meter.
runoff?
Yeah, what's
You
that?
got tested runoff?
You're gonna test your solution.
So, my batch tank.
You're gonna test your batch tank, what you're putting in. Another thing too, if you guys are on dosatrons with Athena, and again, I'll say Athena, but it's salts in general. If you're running Floraflex, they have a form of cleanse. If you're running front row, you can add cleanse. You can add, there's all different types of oxidizers. You can use, I know guys that use Sanidate. I know guys that fucking are risky enough to fucking run a low amount of bleach. Anything to bring your ORP up. You can put ozone into your water. Some of the facilities I go through got crazy. And there's multiple different ways to raise your ORP, but you're gonna test your final batch tank solution, and whatever oxidizer you're using, most prevalent is gonna be hypochlorous acid or cleanse or root drip or whatever else they have. What's the current culture shit?
UC roots.
UC roots. Any of that should always be added to the end of your nutrients. So if you're running a dosatron, it should be the last fucking thing. It's gonna take way more if you put it at the beginning and mix it first to get to that ORP level than if you mix it last. That should be the last thing.
You're saying put cleanse last?
Yeah.
I always put cleanse first.
Last.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
So last. And
So
like,
the first dosatron chart that ever came out for cleanse, it was first, right? Because there just wasn't enough knowledge around
Gotcha.
ORP. Also, it makes sense because I don't want to fucking rot my goddamn seals out any faster than they already do.
Well,
And
yeah,
an
you don't wanna do-
oxidizer
yeah.
going through all those
Makes
dosage
sense,
times.
yeah.
Now, the only upside to it going first is it kept all my fucking chambers a lot cleaner,
Okay.
but I run it last.
Okay, are all ORP readers created equal? I'm seeing one for 600 and one for $34.
I mean, you get what you pay for.
Okay.
Yeah, you get
Okay,
just
and you
like
like 400 going in or
I
higher?
always want to be about 450.
Okay.
Yep. So for
Going in,
ORP,
you mean?
I want to always be 450 and up. Now this is if you're running sterile.
I am,
Like if
yeah.
you're not running sterile, and I have rooms I run both ways. I have rooms I ran Athena with no cleanse just to see how long it could go. My shit's still clean. The only difference is I just running at a high ORP in a root zone is gonna keep me free of any pythium,
Yes.
and it also cuts down on. That's a whole nother topic when I have gnats
It
and
makes
pests.
the weed grow better.
It's your larvae of any sort do not like a high sterile environment. They don't. Now, do I still have gnats? Yes, but it's way lower. You know, I can't tell you the last time I had an outbreak between running a high ORP in an IPM program that's preventative, not reactive. I don't ever battle with pests, hardly
Yeah.
ever. Right. Other than maintenance.
At what point is your RP like too high? Is there?
Yes, above 600. You know, you don't want to push much above 600, so anywhere in between here is pretty good. Now, you may go on Google and see something else. I'm just telling you that's been my experience. So,
So do you even recommend like using it like a pro mix, like hand watering it?
dude, I used to crush 2-gallon Pro Mix on fucking a Pro Line. Yeah, ORP. That Pro Mix is like fucking cocoa. I mean, that shit right there is pretty much cocoa
Yeah, it's
to me.
soilless.
Yeah, it's I love Pro Mix, bro. Pro Mix is the shit. Yeah.
It's literally what it's called. Soilless.
Yeah, it's exactly. Pro Mix is awesome.
It's
Yeah, same shit.
treated and shit like that, you know.
Yep.
A little buffer, but that's about it. Yeah.
So let's roll in real quick there. Let's talk about cloning. Again, I brought some. There's a million different ways to do this. I'm gonna reference our Athena's SOP. They put a lot of time into that. I personally don't follow. They have a different regiment for. They have a different regiment for the recipe they use on Bloom and Core. I don't even know the grams per gallon. They use a different formulation that they've trialed, and I know it works great. And most of the client, I don't. I'm lazy. I use my same veg formula to soak my fucking clones in. Everything in veg, from clones to moms to teens to everything for me, gets all fed the same shit. So, and I don't use Grow. I use Bloom and Core all the way through the entire flower. Lucas formula, and again, there's not a wrong way to do anything. I like things simple, so I take the same two bases and I just change the ratios as I move from clone all the way to flower. That's it.
So you're not using Grow at all?
I don't use Grow. No, I don't use Grow. It's I used to, and like it's not bad, and most people do. It's simple. I just get more nitrogen and calcium. I just up the core.
Is that because you're running a short veg as well?
Yeah, I mean, so like my mom's, I've always fed a more PK formula, so like more potassium, more phosphorus for my moms. As moms get older, they want more of that. I get better pith in all of my fucking cuts, especially on big moms. And so I've always used that anyway. So for me, it was simplicity.
Okay.
You know, Grow and Core works amazing. It's what we formulate everything around. The way I do things, that just works. It's more streamlined. So I'm gonna start with my normal veg solution, and I use either Grodan AOKs or Root Riots. I think again, this is back to more testing microbial. You'll see most people in facilities using Rockwool. I think it's more sterile. I think I get better roots quicker in fucking peat rooters. I think I like that these dry out faster. And again, this is all preference. You guys may use the Floraflex ones or something. I just use these. I have the best results with those. They're always consistent. I get the big boxes from Craig. I go through like one a month, like the big ones, and I use either if I'm using Rockwool, I either use this type of insert. Or I do use these terracotta trays. Sometimes with Rockwool, I go back and forth again. I'm always trialing things. I think my most consistent cloning is in these, personally for me. And I'm gonna soak those. Some people do like a day. I do like 10 minutes in a 5-gallon bucket. I literally just go over to my spigot, veg solution, throw them in, and then cut the clones. You can use a variety of different cloning compounds. I use Clonex and Cuts both. I used to use this shit.
Yeah.
That used to be that.
Throwback.
It's funny when you brought me this. I was like, damn, I ain't seen that in a while. This used to be the go-to right there. Again, everybody, I used to harden off. I don't harden off. I go back and forth with it, and it's such a fucking, it's another step. It's another step, and then like with all the viroids now, and I'm like, fuck, bro, I'm like putting you all in a cup of water, and maybe that branch has HIV or fucking something else. Now they're all in it. So really, the right way to do it would be put each cut in its own solo cup. You know what I mean? So I just, I cut them, and they get, I dip, and when I dip, I only put just the cut. I don't dip it way down to I just get that wound covered. Like barely dip it on the cloning solution. I don't put a lot on there. Just enough to cover where I cut on a 45, right? That's it. I just barely dip that, plug it into the root riot. I do every other hole. So on like a normal 50 cell, I do 25 clones per dome. Shout out to Sean. These big domes are the fucking best right here. Those are the only ones I use. Hopefully soon I won't be using domes anymore. What's that? It's another thing, like, right? Like some people live by it. Like I used to do that shit all the time because I watched like some YouTube videos years ago, and I forget who it was. Like I scraped my stems with a razor blade. I don't know, like, you know what I mean? Like, and I a lot of you guys probably know, like, if you're on Instagram, you probably know Slow Nickel. He's an old timer in the ag industry, and he's huge on like
Callus Tech.
like just getting your clone to calcify over like very quickly on that wound, and like, you know, actually poking the end all the way through. And he has his own method. I set my rooters up, and I'm literally cut, dip, plug, cut, dip, plug. I try to do it as quick as I can, and then I go into these domes. And my method is I go about 50% vents open day one, and then by day two I'm all the way open, and then I have double the amount of domes that I need. I have a rack in my clone room where I always have extra racks that are nice and dry. I used to do the one roll of these every other day and wipe. Nah, fuck that shit. I just spent more money on these, and I just swap them out every day. Every morning I come in, I take it off, I set these, I don't touch them. That way I don't get the smearing, it just evaporates. I take a new one and I put it on. Usually about day 8, you're getting roots, and at that point, with domes right now, I have another set of trays, and I swap trays out that have pins in them on each side, and little thumbtacks that stick up. So when I put this on, now it's up off of about that far. Biggest thing with cloning, where I fucked up for years, was too high humidity. I was closing everything off, was just sweating, and the issue that I see, the issue I was personally having with it. It's not that they wouldn't root, like that wasn't the issue. It was like just everything getting moldy, the leaves getting in and like getting like ground off, and like, you know, I need for how I operate, I run a higher plant count, so I need those clones. I take 25% extra every round. I used to take 50% because I couldn't guarantee that these were all gonna be better. You know what I mean?
The best, so even if they root,
you
there's
know,
still gonna be worse ones.
What's that?
Even if they root, there's still gonna be better ones. Like
I do when I gotta take 1,000 cuts to refill a couple rooms. Like for me, I depend on that, so I would always cut a little bit more. I still take about, you know, like 25% more, and that's just because I want the best of the best. All my clones, I want them all starting off. I don't want a mountaintop of clones. I don't want clones this tall. I don't want clones this tall. I don't want stuff that just the tops that are really vigorous. My tops, I cut off my mom's. They go into a separate dome for my mom restarts. I don't really use my big, huge tops. Those are only used for restarting my mom's. I always want my best, most vigorous clones for my mom restarts. I like to take the B's, the cuts that are right below that for production. It's just the best from what I found.
What about, are you syringe, or are you scalpel, or scissors cleaned with 20% bleach on cross and straight?
I use blades, disposable blades, and every genetic, I just throw the blade away.
I think that's the most important thing. Because no one knows about hops, unfortunately.
Yeah, sterilization and like, you know, is super important. Obviously, sterilization is important in all the viroids and everything now, and you know, keeping things orderly in your room, and I just honestly, I buy the cheapest scissors, I use them, I throw them away. I buy the cheapest razor blades, I use them, I throw them away. I can't manage every aspect of my grow, and I can't avoid mistakes, so like I just set things up with my crew to we just throw things away. We go strip a room, We're done with the scissors, we throw them away.
Yep.
We're done taking clones. Every genetic, use a razor blade to throw it away.
Got it.
It's cheap. It's not a lot of money.
Trying to get rid of those variables.
Yes, exactly,
100%.
exactly, yeah.
The scalpels are fucking sick. I mean, I'd rather sit there and.
It's a
you
learning
know,
curve to learn how to use it, but now I got it.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, normally by day 12 to 14, they're coming out of the dome and they're being hardened off. Usually about day 10 to 11, when they're busting good roots, I run 18.6 on clones. Some people run 24. Some people run, I know guys that do 24, 17.7. I know guys that use shade light and they swear by that, all different things, right? I run 18.6. I like that dark period. And I like that dark period because when I start hardening my clones off, I start taking the domes off when they go into darkness and letting them dry out without the lights to kind of, and that hardening period is super important. I'm excited for those domes. I'm excited for those wraps that'll be dropping soon for the tents. Yeah, I don't know if you guys that are on a commercial scale, like, dude, all my time is my personal time. I'd say 50% of my personal time every week is all veg and cloning and propagation. Because I'm so anal about that whole process.
It's your
and
next start.
it's your next start.
Yeah.
It's the most important.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Your mom health and your clones. It's one part that I micromanage, and it's like it's super fucking important.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things I would want as far away from everything else as the traffic.
Yep,
From the
100%.
How about when you know when to water your clones? We've been doing where we got a little scale and we weigh.
Yep.
And every day, but I got 15, 20 trays
Yeah,
that I gotta
it's
weigh
not
every day.
feasible.
Yeah,
I do it, but what are you doing to know when to water your clones?
Mine's pretty much down to science. I know at day 5 that they're going to need their first
it.
watering.
Yeah, your environment.
And now that's doing it this method. When I used to dome off and close everything up a lot more, they didn't need it till they weren't drying back fast enough for me. And that dry back period is important. So usually day 5, and then usually again at day 8. Once I put those pins on and raise these domes off, they start drying out a lot faster. And then obviously once they get roots, it's almost every day. And there's guys that use like a tote, and I see them dunking.
That's what I'm doing.
You know, that's cool. I personally, I don't like sharing the root zones of all the different flavors. I take my wand, I fill everything up all the way up, I let it sit for about a minute, and I just dump.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Right onto the table, let it go to waste.
There's systems that you can actually do to make a whole flood and drain with a clone drain. I mean,
Yeah.
you
At any
have a lot.
Do you leave water on the bottom of the trays?
What's that?
No.
At any point, do you ever leave water?
When they start having,
Eroding,
when the roots are busted through, I'll leave just
a
a
little
tiny
kiss
little
of
bit,
water.
but I make
Yeah.
sure every single day that tray is sprayed out.
Yeah.
Just again, Pythium is you leave too much down there, it's a hot, humid environment. Pythium don't take long to sporulate, and clones still, that's why that cleanse for me, that oxidizer is important, just to keep that potential down, so.
Do you dip them in cleanse before you?
The clones?
That's the harden.
No, you
No,
don't.
I don't, I personally don't, I know
Yeah, I
people.
wanna harden, I do that, yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Don't do that.
I know people that do, and
Yeah,
again,
I
there's.
watch Mobile J do it.
Yep,
stuff like
yeah,
that, so.
there's a lot of different ways to clone. I mean, I know guys that they don't even, I know a couple guys that don't even use any cloning gel. They just fucking stick, and
Do you use a heating pad?
For years.
I don't use a heating pad. No, I just make sure my clone room's dialed in. My clone room, I do a little cooler. Clone room, I leave at about 75 degrees, 60% humidity. So, if I had the infrastructure, I would really like to probably go no dome, like a whole room. If I could keep it like, dialed in the right way.
Those tents should help for that.
Tents will help for that, for sure.
Well, I'm saying those new ones.
Yeah, I'm really excited for that. Personally, for me, that we did like a time study, and for you guys that are more larger scale, I'm sure like, I just see man hours. Every time I gotta get up and I'm like, oh, time to go to the clone room, I'm like, fuck. So many hours just like.
Taking the dome off.
You can't trust I don't trust anybody else to do that job. It's gotta be me.
Where's your facility located?
In Lansing.
Lansing.
Yeah, I
Where-
actually talked to Max yesterday.
Nice.
Yeah.
What's the name of it?
Boathouse.
Nice.
Yeah.
We're in Lansing.
Right in the middle, basically.
Nice.
Yeah.
I'm in Lansing. I'm 10 minutes
Yeah.
south of Lansing. That's hometown. That's what's up.
Basically.
That's cool. What's Class C?
Yeah.
Nice. Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah, everything changes when you get legal.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Like we've worked with so many people in Michigan in general, just going from the caregiver ways to like adapting to the and
That
it's
60/60 was a killer in the beginning.
Yep.
Yeah. For testing.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It is, man, and it's like, I think that if it was me, I'd probably like ride that line where it's like, how can I still pass but keep
quality.
it as close as I can to
Yeah.
that, right? That's personally what I'd be doing.
Are you squeezing your plugs before you put them in the trays, or are you just?
With Rockwell, I do like a quick shake, because I still do, I go back and forth with both, I kind of mess around with both. With root rights, I don't, I literally take them out and throw them right in there,
Yeah.
because they dry out faster, you know, they're a little more porous. So.
What about, like a clone you pull off? Are you leaving 3-leaf? Are you stripping them down a lot? You leave all your leaf?
I take them and trim off the top. You know, I grab every single one and pull my fingers up over it. I like to use like a lead or two, but I don't want a lot of leaf matter and a lot of canopy in my dome.
Okay.
I don't want everything smashed.
Yeah.
Right.
I definitely don't. I see some people that clone them down to I'm like, there's barely anything on that thing left. You know,
Well, yeah,
they root, but I feel like the transition period and we need leaves to photosynthesize.
Right.
So I don't want a super thick canopy. It's why I go every other hole in my domes. I also don't want dinky Jesus Christ. I got this. We have this term called Cali. Every time I get a cut from Cali,
Those little bottom cuts.
call them Cali cuts.
Yeah, no.
I get a cut from Cali. It take me 9 months to get that.
Yeah.
fucking
About
right.
2 picks stem diameter.
It is the lower. I'm like, bro, can you go any smaller?
Yeah.
You know, how did you even put this into Rockwell without like,
Oh,
you know, how did it even go in there without breaking in half? But I like consistent cuts. You know, for moms, me personally, my moms, I want them I like running about 7 to 10 gallons for my moms, and 2 weeks before I take cuts, I top everything down. You know, I want to minimize those big, huge tops.
Yeah.
Like, they're cool for like maybe
For
a mom
mom,
restart.
for a mom,
You're also
yeah,
going to
restart.
have usually the least amount of pith in those.
Yeah, okay.
Pith is very important. You don't want hollow stems.
Yeah.
You know, and you're always going to find that on the bigger stalks.
Yeah.
So I usually top all that down 2 weeks before I got to take cuts. That way in 2 weeks I come through and I got twice as many good, nice, medium-sized cuts.
Medium-sized.
Right? And again, that's for production. I'll usually take the biggest ones, and I take one tray and I'll do 5 of each train of the nicest, biggest tops, and that's for mom restart.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Right? And then as far as HLV and every other fucking thing we're
Yeah.
seeing right now, it's like the best thing you can do is continue to clone down like as clean as you can the most healthy cuts on your plants. You know, I'm not going to take some weak lower and that's my next mom. No. I want the healthiest restart. And typically, like, if I'm going into flower, if I have a whole room that's vegging and we're gonna flip, if there's a monster of let's just say there's one clone there that's just fucking, I'll pull that out. I'm like, oh, that's just going to mom. I don't, you know what I want everything as consistent there as I can, and I want that really vigorous one.
Yeah.
I want that back. Like that's gonna keep my genetics like is at least as healthy as I can.
That makes sense.
You know.
What about, how long are you keeping your moms alive?
That depends. I mean, sometimes only 2 months, sometimes 2 months, sometimes 4.
But I'm saying you don't go past 4, right? I'm
4 to
running into
6
problems
months.
after 4.
4 to 6 months.
Okay.
Yeah, 4 to 6 months. It
Okay.
depends on how many clones I'm stripping off of it. Depends on how healthy
How she's looking,
plant,
right.
how she's looking, what strain, some genetic, how old the strain is. Is it something I just found from seed, or is it
Oh, okay.
is it something I've had around? I just got fucking, like Death Star back, and I'm like, bro, this thing has been around for fucking, Jesus, I got this thing, and it was like, I mean, it's old, so it ain't, I'm getting a rip of clones off it. I'm probably gonna have to do meristem on it soon just to get
Got
it
it,
back, because it's getting a little long.
Got it. And that's what I was gonna say. You have meristem options?
I mean, I'll pay for it for now. Hopefully soon I'll just use one of those kits and fucking do it like I
Hell
got
yeah,
myself.
right?
Yeah, I know it's important. I think for all of us, I mean, your genetics are everything you got, right?
Exactly.
That's what separates you sometimes at the end of the day. Legal too, huge, bro. You guys are legal, like, that's the number one thing we see. I'm like, man, everybody, you guys fucking can't all grow motor breath 15, bro. Jesus Christ. I mean, I love motor breath. Fuck, I love it, but that's definitely a big thing for sure. Your genetic selection's huge. Knowing, again, another thing with cloning too is like, somebody just said rainbow belts, like knowing how your genetic clone, right? Like rainbow belts or how fast it veggies, scheduling all your cuts is huge. Rainbow belts, Skittles, if you ever grown the original Skittles, you need literally a double plant density and twice as long a veg.
So that was gonna be my next question, right? So you have, I have 150 clones to take. So for 150, you're not gonna take that off one mom. What's your average clone pull from a mom?
70. If I had a nice big mom, I can get 75 to 100 nice cuts.
Okay. Okay.
If she's big, and I need one light per mom, pretty much, 1 4x4, 5x5 area.
Okay.
Yeah.
What size pot is the modern?
7 to 10.
7 to 10.
Yeah, sometimes bigger. I mean, depends on. I'm weird. I like to hand water all my moms. You know what I mean? So, but
You were mentioning pit, and I have a couple strains that like, they seem to want more than I'm giving them, and I'm kind
More
of, like,
food?
I'm seeing a lack in the pit, and I'm giving them the same thing I'm giving everything else, you know, ice,
Yep.
on irrigation,
Rockwool or
and I was just
cocoa?
wondering- Cocoa, and I was just wondering about like, if you thought maybe like increasing cal, or maybe even B might be the limiting factor.
What nutrient?
Okay,
Blended or Proline?
bro.
Proline up in your core percentage, the ratio core.
Yeah.
So like in veg, in veg I run
Increased transpiration, right?
in veg I run 50-50 on mils per gallon stock concentrate of core and bloom. And they're doing the same thing with grow, 50-50. And that 50-50 ratio, so for me on my dosatrons, I think it's 25 mils of both core and bloom to get the 3 EC. And the reason that we changed that, and the same thing goes for grow, 50-50. I think it should be right around the same. You're upping that cal nitrate, you're upping that calcium, you know. In Rockwool, generally, I was momming in Rockwool for a little bit. I was hopefully trying to get away from like cocoa and the mess and go as clean as I could. I mean, I'm not an expert in Rockwool, but man, in Rockwool, I get way faster growth. Everything's better, but the pith, I don't care what I do, it's harder to get. I feel like the cut quality I get off of cocoa in a cocoa base with a bigger mom. We tried to do hedges for mom for a little while. So instead of doing one big mom, I did like 9 small plants.
Yeah.
I just did like a hedge.
Pop everybody.
Yeah, in Rockwool, the cut quality wasn't the same. Super healthy, just not as much pith. But I would recommend just upping that core a little bit. When I charge cocoa bags, you know, for a room too, same thing. I run 4 EC and I run an extra EC of core. I just crank the fuck out of my core because that bags need to be charged with more calcium.
So you're running 50-50 core to bloom all the way through?
No, in veg.
In veg?
This is veg.
And then you switch to a 70-30?
I go 70-30 and then flower, so during stretch.
Right,
So during stretch, I go 60-40. So bulk, I go 70-30. And then for finish, I do that same 70-30, only I supplement the fade at the end.
Got it.
Now, does that fade, does that supplement out the calcium nitrate for a different calcium? Or is it
Yeah, it's calcium. There's calcium chloride.
Okay.
Yeah, it's calcium chloride. The other available option that we looked at, we tested, was calcium carbonate, which is calcium carbonate's awesome, but it's so fucking unstable in reservoir and root zone. And calcium chloride, if any of you guys have ever mixed up raw calcium chloride from powder, it's fucking, it'll melt your fucking tanks down. It's very dangerous. It's very hot when you first mix it off.
Yeah.
That's why it is a liquid product and not powder. And also, it's not just calcium chloride. It's all the micronutrients and elements from core. It's pretty much a liquid form of core with no nitrogen.
Have you seen that micronized calcium from Slow Nickel you were mentioning?
Yeah, that's cal carbonate.
Oh, it is cal carbonate?
Yeah, it's cal carbonate. Yeah, yeah, it works great. It's just tested out. It's unstable, a little unstable, especially in your reservoir when it's mixed off. So.
That 50-50 is brand new to me, so I'm trying. It says 25 mil for both. So you're gonna run 25-25 for 50-50.
Yeah, it's 50-50 means the ratio.
Right.
So it's 25 to 25.
Okay, because I don't understand the ratio conversions. I just look at the chart. So if you tell me 70-40, I don't know what that means unless I see that.
Yeah, that's not so like feed charts are always suggested, right? Like this isn't on the feed chart.
Right.
This is some of this stuff is, some of this stuff is here. But I'm always playing with things, and I want a little bit of more potassium and phosphorus.
It makes sense.
And I want a higher calcium content.
Especially charging the block going in, right? You want that higher core.
Yeah, more
up
calcium.
coming in.
More calcium.
Yep.
Now, when you say charging your block, like your cocoa, are you just saying like hydrating it and then letting it dry overnight?
Yeah, to concentrate before you transfer.
Yeah, like putting my drippers in and like hydrating. I use compressed bags a lot, right? Like quick fills or whatever. With loose fill, I love loose fill more, and I love hard pots more. It's just labor and cost and everything else. Trying to keep that down a little bit.
Yeah.
If I had the manpower and I had the extra, if I could justify the extra little bit of cost, I would still do loose fill hard pots, 1 gallon. Just, dude, it saves.
Cleaning and everything.
You go through and you
Yeah.
top feed that pot one time. It's the same coming out the bottom.
Yeah.
A lot of the blocks you gotta be charge them just a lot of calcium.
They come unbuffered. Oh yeah, they come unbuffered.
Yeah, and you just, I know a lot of guys that just use straight like Yarkel nitrate to charge
So
their
you're
bags.
charging them
3C,
transfer the
just
next day?
calcium nitrate. So, that's huge.
When
too.
you're mixing up your corn and bloom, I watched your YouTube video a few years ago.
Yep.
So you're still doing the 2-to-1 for the bloom?
2-to-1 ratio? Yeah, 2-to-1 ratio always on everything.
Even on the core?
Core, bloom, and everything's 2-to-1. That just keeps the ratios the same through everything. Yeah. Go from 150 to 250 on, I keep the 18.6 for everything in veg. Once again, some people like 24/7. I know a lot of guys that do that way they can go kind of work in their veg whenever they want. I get it. I like that period. I spray and stuff like that too. So.
Makes it tough on the
Flower, what, my light schedule?
Yeah.
I go back and forth. I do 11-13, 12-12. Sometimes I'll go 12-12, 11-13, 10-14. Always mess around, see if there's anything that. Yeah, just mess around, man. Play around. Play around. Yep. Yeah, just. It is.
It took us a while, but.
Is your facility up there is HPS or LED?
HPS.
Yeah. Single tier, obviously, then, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
You doing veg LED or veg metal halide?
No, it's
CMH?
Lux, it's the same.
Lux?
Yeah, it's a Lux.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah.
It's cool. I almost bought a plot last year to do a spot up in Lansing, but
Yeah, a lot of hurdles.
couldn't get the property for the price I wanted.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah.
And build out. It's like,
Yeah.
again, it's like fucking everything goes up, mechanical, everything's going up, and
It's only
couldn't.
getting worse.
yeah, there's a spot right over by the fucking strip club I was gonna get. It's a really good location. Had my whole platform laid out for like stripper nights and like.
Take the crew out every once in a while.
We can't drink there, you know what I mean? In the strip club, so it's like, come get lit up before you go there. But,
That's why I go to the strip clubs in Detroit. You can drink and smoke.
so yeah, that's pretty much all I wanted to cover for today. I don't know if anybody has any other questions. Otherwise, I'm gonna be hanging around for a while. We can eat,
When
hang
you just
out.
mentioned like the 2-to-1 thing, what did you mean by that when it's 50-50? That just kinda
So
confused me.
50-50 ratio of, so like if I always mix everything at 2 pounds to 1 gallon, right? So I'm gonna I mix everything the same, that way the ratios of that nutrient are the same. I'm not gonna mix core 1-to-1 and then this 2-to-1. And then by 50-50, I mean I'm feeding the same of core and bloom. So I'm feeding 25 mils of core and 25 mils of the bloom. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So the ratio of actually what I'm feeding of each part is 50-50, and then I'm gonna push 60-40, heavier on the bloom, less on the core, and then when we get into bulk, way more bloom, less core, and then when we get to the end, we're gonna drop core and replace it with fade.
So in other
And
words.
that's just to drop nitrogen. That's the only reason that they did that, was to just get nitrogen out of there completely. I mean, I ran calcium chloride with just bloom for a while, that worked great, but we wanted to have the micronutrients in there. That's important to get some of that stuff in there at the end of flower. And I mean, we tested like, I don't know if you guys are familiar with like Ghostbuster Farms, a really good friend of mine. He did a year of trialing at scale, same Cushmans over and over and over with it, to see, are we getting the terpene differences? Are we seeing higher THC differences, just over and over and over again? And then after that, we had to bring it to a few other facilities at scale to run it. And we tested like, things like, a lot of guys run right now. I know one of the things we were doing for a while with Athena, and this can be transferred over to any other nutrient line, ain't just fucking Athena. Run a PK booster with CalMag to the end. That's a great way to finish, right? Push the sulfates, get your calcium in there, but most freaking CalMag still have nitrogen, right? You're still gonna have a little bit of nitrogen there. So then we went to running PK with just like a calcium chloride and mixing it off yourself. That worked good, but we just felt like it wasn't quite what we were looking for, and then so we got fumbling around, and then we decided to make a liquid version of core, because that's everything we wanted is in core, except we just didn't want that nitrogen in there.
Yeah.
And if you're running any other line, it doesn't matter. You can take this fade product, you can run it with any PK booster.
Okay.
I have rooms I do unblended. I'll run to day 49 and then I'll switch over to fucking their bloom from the powder bloom and fade. Run it out. It's just a finisher, right?
Yeah.
The elements are all the same. Any other questions? Or is it, what's up? What up, man?
I'm running an air toner with loose pods and cocoa. Do you recommend charging them, letting them sit overnight before you charge them?
You're doing the aero cloner into loose fill cocoa?
Yeah.
I mean,
Normally I'd put like hydrating them and setting it.
yeah, I would charge it like high and just set that thing right in. Yeah, let it dry back. Anytime I go right into like a 1 gallon or something, I just plug it just like you would a Rockwell, give it like 2-3 days, let it dry back like 50%, and then hit it again, let it do that one more time, and then start irrigating. Yeah, I think Jay will be here in a little bit. That's what you should ask. He's the water clone master.
I was curious about that. Do you prefer using cubes over like a aero?
Aero cloners are like, listen, for mob restarts, like anybody that's ever aero cloned, I mean, Jesus Christ, you can't get them more vigorous, but man, with all the viroids and just everything now, I'm so paranoid, bro. I just, you know,
The only reason propagation is the way to go.
Okay.
Because you can get so many more in
Right.
such a small space.
have you guys seen that fuck, like current culture's got like that fucking cloner that's like, you can add on and it, dude, we saw it, it's badass, but like,
But it's so
you got one cut in there that's defected, you just are spraying it all over everything. I just,
Too scary.
There's a little bit more problems. I mean, the pump heat up.
but for like home, dude, if you're a home grower, like he's probably growing at home and you're running the same strains and you know your shit's clean, run it. I still have aero cloners, I'll bust them out once in a while.
We were talking about a tech where you go aero cloner for the first day and a half until you see the calluses pop out, and once the calluses pop, then you go into the tube. It'll save you like 4 or 5 days for large places.
That seems like too many steps.
Yeah, absolutely. But they say it saves mad days on your flip.
I will say too, once you get out so you're not having to reconfigure or refill the reservoir.
Right, it's time.
Figure out where you're gonna put your column while you're
Dude, those big 128 inch cloners are such a fucking beast to drain. Oh god damn, bro. Like, so you gotta pipe them all in and like have drains on them to do it right. Anybody else been the victim of trying to carry that thing like over to a sink?
Oh, 100%.
Not over you.
You suck. Nowadays, like, with all the information out there, like you're saying, if you get this dialed in, you're gonna be just as fast.
90%.
That's what you're gonna have that nice space.
Mom health is almost a fault. If your mom's your health, your older health, you're gonna off it real quick. I'm ready to smoke. You good? Appreciate you all being here. Appreciate it.